Yes, welcome everyone. Cannabis news with Joe Klare for April 25th, 2018, presented by the Marijuana Times. Check out all the great articles and all of the episodes of Cannabis news, all up on marijuanatimes.org, plus all our social media networks. You can go check us out there as well, marijuanatimes.org. Of course, you can find this show, the podcast, on Apple Podcasts. If you want to see the video, marijuanatimes.org, YouTube, Facebook, many places. Just search the Marijuana Times on YouTube and Facebook to find the show. Like, subscribe, comment, share, all of that good stuff. Help us spread the truth about cannabis through this show. Today, talking about legalization in Michigan. Things are looking good for that, at least at this point. We'll talk about that, plus a new study about crime and marijuana legalization. Also some news out of Pennsylvania about the medical marijuana program there. A little update, if you will, about Pennsylvania. But first, Cannabis News with Joe Klare is brought to you by naturesidecannabis.com. Check out the organic, all-natural pesticides that are on the approved for use in the cultivation of marijuana list by the Colorado, Washington, and Oregon State Agricultural Departments. Grow safe and poison-free, and make sure you're regulatory compliant in the state that you're cultivating in. You can do all that by going to naturesidecannabis.com and checking out the organic, all-natural pesticides. Thank you to naturesidecannabis.com for being a proud sponsor of Cannabis News. This first story from marijuanatimes.org from Julia Granowitz. Cannabis legalization in Michigan looks more than likely to happen in 2018. The group MI Legalize has proposed the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. Marijuana, spelled with an H. Don't know why we're still doing that. I guess it's, old-fashioned, traditional. We spell marijuana with an H. I don't know. I think we'd all agreed to move to the J by now, but there's still some holdouts. We're going with the H in marijuana. The Bureau of Elections in Michigan announced that they estimated that organizers had collected over 277,000 valid signatures, which surpasses the 252,523 that are required to qualify for the ballot in November. The Board of State Canvassers is expected to certify the count later this week. The proposed act would allow adults 21 years and older to possess, grow, and use cannabis legally. It will allow for the possession up to 2.5 ounces outside the home, which is a lot more than the states that are legal right now recreationally. Most of them have legal limits at an ounce. Well, I believe, I have to look it up, but either Massachusetts or Maine maybe has a higher limit, but Maine's having trouble with their regulations, so it doesn't matter. For all intents and purposes, the limit has been an ounce across most states. It'd be 2.5 ounces in Michigan. You'd also be able to have up to 10 ounces in the home. In addition to those 10 ounces, individuals would also be allowed to possess any cannabis they grew themselves with a limit of 12 plants per household. So in other words, compared to most recreational legalization measures, this is robust, has higher limits, which is a good thing. If we start progressing in that direction with higher limits, less restrictions, less taxes, things like that, the legislation would impose a 10% excise tax on retail sales in addition to the state's regular 6% sales tax. So it looks like the voters in Michigan will be able to vote on marijuana legalization in November. And that, of course, is a good thing. This next story from straight.com. Study shows cannabis legalization in Washington state led to significant decreases in crime. Now, I'm not a huge fan of that title. I'll tell you why in a minute. Basically, a study published in the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organizations was written by a group of economists from the University of Bologna in Italy. Is that how you say that? Bologna? I know it's not Bologna. If I said University of Bologna, I would know immediately that is wrong. But I think it's Bologna. If not, well, I'm really bad at that kind of stuff. I should have looked up the pronunciation on Google earlier, before this show, and then I would look smart. Now, the cat's out of the bag. It examines crime data from 2013 to 2014, the 2-year time span when recreational cannabis was legal in the state of Washington, but illegal in the neighboring state of Oregon. So basically, they looked at the counties on the border in legalized Washington and not legal yet Oregon. First pass evidence has provided that the legalization of cannabis markets across U.S. states is inducing a crime drop, write the authors of the study's abstract. In the study's abstract, we exploit the staggered legalization of recreational marijuana enacted by adjacent states, Washington, 2012, and Oregon in 2014, by comparing crime statistics and drug consumption data from counties along the border in each state. They determined that legalization led to a, quote, significant reduction in rapes and property crimes in Washington in the 2 years following legalization. According to the authors of the study, the number of reported rapes was reduced by between 15 and 30%, while thefts were reduced by 10 to 20%. Consumption of cannabis did increase in the state of Washington, as you would imagine, under legalization, and easier access to supply. They found that consumption of other drugs, including alcohol, was reduced, as were incidents of binge drinking. Though the authors, and here's the important part, though the authors of the study were obviously unable to determine exactly why crime rates were reduced after legalization, they do offer explanations as to what may have contributed to the overall reduction. Of course, the relaxation and euphoria effect of marijuana makes people less likely to rape or commit crimes, property crimes, theft, such things as that. I'll get it. I'm a little off today, but I'm honing in. I'm honing in on the target. Working through it. Also, noting that people were probably substituting cannabis for, quote, violence-inducing substances such as alcohol, cocaine, and amphetamines. Also, allowing cops not to go after marijuana users and maybe patrol other crime and solve other crimes maybe has helped as well. Obviously, I wouldn't run out in the streets and start saying, hey, legalization leads to a decrease in crime. I think a lot more data is needed to see exactly what the effect is. It makes sense. I mean, obviously, people are smoking more marijuana or using less alcohol or cocaine or things like that. That's going to reduce property crime, violent crime, things of that nature. Plus, as they point out, police being able to patrol other things and not have to worry about marijuana smokers and processing marijuana possessors and worry about growers and all that other stuff. The more cops can focus on other things that aren't marijuana related, the more they'll be able to, tackle real violent crime, property crime, things of that nature. Now, although it doesn't prove definitively that legalization leads to a reduction in crime, it does mitigate the claim that marijuana legalization will lead to increased crime. People who are against legalization like to say, well, if you legalize marijuana, it's going to lead to more crime. It doesn't really look like that's been borne out, whether it's in Washington or Oregon or Colorado or anywhere else. There's really no link to any increase in crime whatsoever to marijuana legalization. And it could be, again, with this study, and then the very logical reasons pointed out, that it could lead to the opposite, a reduction in overall property and violent crime, which, of course, is a good thing. Obviously, you can go check out that study. All the stories I talk about are linked in the description of this video. This last story is from Philly.com. Pennsylvania approves sale of marijuana flower and will allow cannabis to treat opioid addictions. At a news conference in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Secretary of Health Rachel Levine said she had approved the sale of cannabis flower, the traditional smokable or vaporizable form of the plant. It's another tool, Levine said. The whole idea of this program is to provide another tool in the toolbox of physicians to treat those conditions. Since the launch of state medical marijuana program in February in Pennsylvania, dispensaries have sold only pricey marijuana oils and extracts. Flower, also known as leaf or bud, needs no processing and is less expensive to produce, therefore less expensive to buy. Chris Visco, owner of Terra Vita Holistic Centers, which is a chain of dispensaries with shops in Sellersville and Amington, Pennsylvania, said, quote, for some patients, the cost of their medical marijuana could drop by 50% with the addition of flower. It offers the lowest price per milligram of THC, the active ingredient. Though smoking of cannabis is prohibited by Pennsylvania law, the difference between lighting up and vaporization is literally a matter of degrees. Vaporizing requires less intense heat and a specialized electronic device so that the marijuana doesn't combust, but the method delivers the same psychoactive and physical effects as smoking. To discourage smoking, dispensaries are forbidden from vending pipes, bongs, or rolling papers. In other words, they're selling the flower in Pennsylvania, and you can buy flower in Pennsylvania if you're a medical marijuana patient, or you will be able to. It's going to be allowed, but you're not allowed to go home and smoke it. How they're going to enforce that, I don't know. They're probably not, hopefully, because that would be ridiculous. People go home and they don't feel like vaporizing and they rather just put it in a bowl and smoke it. It's not a big deal. It's going to be fine. Now, obviously, they would discourage that thing, but actually the thought of them prosecuting medical marijuana patients for smoking the flower they bought legally in the privacy of their own home instead of vaporizing seems a bit ridiculous. Not out of the realm of possibility, obviously, when it comes to cannabis laws and how fast they're changing and the things that are going on. But at least people, medical marijuana patients, if they want to go home and smoke, they'll be able to. If they want to roll a joint or whatever, they'll be able to buy the flower at medical marijuana dispensaries. And that is a great thing. And that is going to do it for Cannabis News for April 25th, 2018. Again, thanks to everybody who checks out the show, likes, comments, shares, all that stuff. Make sure you subscribe to our social media network. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. More giveaways are coming. Thank you to naturesidecannabis.com. They're organic, all natural pesticides. They are a great sponsor of the show, naturesidecannabis.com. We'll be back tomorrow with more cannabis news. We'll see you then, everybody.